Today, we're sitting down with someone whose personal journey completely transformed the wellness industry. And I know that's a strong statement, but he deserves it. I want you to meet Robby Besner. Robby's a philanthropist, chief science officer, and co-founder of TheraSage.
I think in today's world, we're disconnected from nature in a way. You know, we walk on the planet, we wear shoes that have rubber soles, we don't really touch the planet. We don't touch Earth. We don't get the frequencies and the energies of Earth. And because of that, many of our systems in our bodies are not synchronized as they would normally if you were touching the Earth.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the 90% Healthy podcast. Today, you'll notice I am flying solo. I do not have my co-host with me. Claudia, unfortunately, was tied up, but we had the opportunity to get our guest on today, and I felt it was important to get this done. So today, we're sitting down with someone whose personal journey completely transformed the wellness industry. And I know that's a strong statement, but he deserves it. I want you to meet Robby Besner. Robby's a philanthropist, chief science officer, and co-founder of TheraSage. Before all the credentials and conference stages, Robby was simply a father searching for answers with his daughter who was diagnosed with Lyme disease. That search led him down a path of infrared healing technology and holistic wellness that would change everything, not just for his family, but for thousands of people around the world. This next line was in his bio, and I connected to it immediately. Now, Robby likes to say he's a father, a husband, and an eternal student of nature. And I think that's one of the reasons we get along so well, because I think that largely fits us both. And the reality comes through everything TheraSage creates. Full disclosure, I use TheraSage products. I'm a rabid enthusiast of these products. They recently had a new product show up on their website called the TheraSage Pro, which integrates multiple technologies, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But Robby, thanks for taking the time and joining us on 90% Healthy.
Wow, fantastic, Don. Thank you for that intro. Appreciate the opportunity to just share our wisdoms together and elevate people's awareness and kind of get everybody dialed in to maybe get rid of some of the urban myths related to light therapy and, you know, just how important this kind of technology is in the healing process.
Yeah. You know, Robby, what's been interesting is you and I met out on the circuit in the biohacking space. You know, there's this group of individuals, they call themselves biohackers. They show up at these shows we go talk to. These are non-traditional therapies. These are non-traditional things that people may use. And now I've been out of that space largely for about a year, kind of back in reality, I would describe. And what's interesting is that, you know, when you're in that biohacking space, your face is so up close to the tree, you don't even see the forest around you. And you've got to back out every once in a while and just see where the regular public is at. And I think that's what we're trying to do with 90% Healthy is put this together so it's approachable for what we call Joe Bag of Donuts out there who's just trying to make life better and get through it. And maybe they've recognized that symptomatic treatment with drugs and surgery, there may be a better way about going about this. And here's some of the interesting things. So with that said, I'll tell you about my first introduction to light therapy. When I was at Ohio State as a sports scientist with the wrestling team, one of my wrestlers, our 125-pounder, he was a national champion, popped an ACL at the World Team Trials that summer. He was going into his senior year. We're doing whatever we can to get this kid back for his senior year. And through a relationship we had with the Air Force Research Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, we had this $160,000 light table from Thor Industries. And I said, and I am a kitchen sink guy, okay? If I've got an athlete that's struggling, I throw everything at him, including the kitchen sink. So we go over, he's on crutches, goes walking in. I put him in this light table for 12 minutes. He gets up, he gets out, he puts his crutches on his shoulder, and he walks out of the facility pain-free. And I am like, whoa, what is going on here? And that was my first introduction. And that's when I started to look into this. You sounds to me like you came at this from the infrared standpoint, the sauna side of the industry. Is that a fair introduction?
Well, sauna is really kind of an expression of infrared, meaning it's a delivery system.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, the Thought, we know Thaw, they're out of Germany, they're an amazing group. So they have either tables or beds that you lay in, and that's their distribution kind of channel. So there's a discussion about the technology, light therapy, the importance of what's called photon biomodulation,
Mm-hmm.
technical term for just light therapy. And then there's the delivery systems. Like, now that you have this science, how do you get that science or that light therapy into the body? So Thor has a unique delivery system, a table, and we've developed a catalog of delivery systems, different ways to get this kind of therapy, this kind of natural event, meaning light comes from the sun, and it's part of nature. And I think that we've developed kind of unique applications that are affordable, portable in some ways, and are designed for an individual to integrate that into their lifestyle so they can take a little bit more responsibility for their health challenge, feel like they're making a contribution, not just checking in at a clinic or with a doctor once a week and they go back to their lifestyle. And, from the sports industry, you're even microscopically looking at it because these players are judged by their performance. They've got to be optimally ready for the event or the competition. And so they're kind of always on, right? And, our view, and we do have an athletic division, Don, but our view is that everybody's born an athlete. You don't need to be
Absolutely.
on a Wheaties box. It's just about, showing up with the best version of yourself every day.
Right. Well, and I've had this conversation with several people. There are markets out there. There are devices that they don't want to get into the athletic market, and I'm like, well, just remember that athletes are humans too. The other 20 hours a day, they have
Right.
the same stresses, they have the same challenges, they have the same issues, and so whether you're an athlete, athletes just happen to be uniquely focused on optimization. That's the big difference between general public and athletes. So as we look at this, so now let's talk about some of these light therapies. Now, over to my right is an infrared sauna. Okay. Behind me is a near infrared light panel. These are different products. This one has light, visible light to my eyes. My infrared sauna does not. My infrared sauna just makes heat. Tell me the difference between the two.
Well, probably the panel behind you, similar to the panel behind me,
Right.
um, has a visible spectrum of light. That's why you can see it as red.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the sauna is generating, if it's an infrared sauna, is generating an invisible spectrum of light. So our eyes and our optic nerve only can capture a certain range of frequencies. And, like, to make it simple for people, in the audience listening today, the rainbow is a visible spectrum. It's the visible light that we see. It illuminates and allows us to see objects and all that stuff. But most of the frequencies of sun energy, which is basically light energy, is invisible to our eye
Right.
as we see it.
And this is the value of getting out into nature at sunrise and at sunset. This is where the infrared, there's a lot of very valuable infrared energy there that benefits our system. And one of the things we talk about in the podcast often is that we now live in an environment where we've shut off our accessibility to morning and evening sunlight. We've got trashy, borderline toxic light generating devices in our life. The fact that we live now, you're up in Michigan today. I am in central Ohio. Night before last, it was 13 degrees below zero where I am. And thank God I live in an environment with a furnace. But that furnace comes with a price. That room comes with a price. And thank goodness I have a dog that every morning gets up about sunrise and wants to go out for a walk. And I really take it as an opportunity to get out and get that light into my eyes. So this is one of the shifts that we've gone through with our modern society. So, but when I get in my infrared sauna, no light, non-visible light, we should say, non-visible light, it heats me up. It creates heat. I get hot in that thing. When I'm in front of my red light panel, it's warm but not hot. And again, by the way, we had Sarah Turner on the podcast a few episodes ago, and we talked about the role of red light's impact on cytochrome C oxidase in the electron transport chain. Are there other benefits that we have that we should cover in this near infrared red light spectrum?
Well, wow, there's a whole encyclopedia of things to talk about there. I think maybe let's take a big step back. And I loved some of the things you said already, Don.
Okay.
I think in today's world, we're disconnected from nature in a way. We walk on the planet, we wear shoes that have rubber soles. We don't really touch the planet. We don't touch Earth. We don't get the frequencies and the energies of Earth because we're insulated by the rubber soles of our sneakers or gym shoes or whatever we're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of a metaphor of the other ways in our modern world that we're disconnected from nature, meaning like we live in a home controlled environment, heated, now it's heat and summer is air conditioning, but we're not living in caves on tents or on the land like we did like our ancestors. And because of that, many of our systems in our bodies are not synchronized as they would normally if you were touching the earth. That's just an expression I use. And so, like people talk about circadian rhythm, you mentioned earlier about early morning sun and afternoon sun. These are different frequencies of light because their sun's relationship to the earth, that angle is called an azimuth. And then as the earth is rotating, it's rotating on our axis, and that's what gives us seasons. So now we're winter time, and we're depending on where you are on the earth. Let's say you and I are both in the sort of upper peninsula area or upper part of the U.S. So that now when the earth is turning, it's turning away from sun, so they're not getting the direct sunlight that we would during summer when that's changing. And then as the earth is rotating through the day, we're getting different spectrums of light, invisible light that is showing up and heating the earth. The infrared spectrum heats 80% of the earth's surface, and it's completely invisible.
Wow.
Einstein did a study where he studied the effects of the sun thermal energy, sun energy, and how it affects life on the planet. And he basically came out with that everything is a frequency in nature, and that there is a very relationship between all these frequencies of light, frequencies of sound, and the biology and physiology of every living plant and animal on the earth. So without, he came out and said, without infrared, there'd be no life on the planet as we see it. Now, these are invisible to our eyes, yet they have a complete impact on our biology. And that study of that is very intriguing to me, because as science is unfolding, we're understanding that each of the degrees, each of these nanometers of light frequencies has different physiological effects on our bodies.
Right. And honestly, you are on the cutting, bleeding edge of using some of these therapies. I went and did a PubMed search on some of these things, and there might be 100 studies out there. The top one was done with the same groups I was working with at Ohio State back 15 through 18 when I was there. So that this is so recent. One of the challenges I find is that our medical system has conditioned us to, you want this dose for this period of time and then get off. And that's difficult to do with some of these therapies that we're playing with, whether they be light therapy or energies or things like that. What I have found is that there is a benefit that comes from this light therapy use, particularly the IR, the near IR. And I've experienced it in my life. I see it in some of the things that I measure. I do see a boost in HRV. And Robby, if you listen to the podcast, I'm an HRV freak. I do see it in HRV. I know my wife sees it just in how she feels. So we know there's benefit there. We may not completely have the answer on dosing yet. But here's the good thing. I don't see a toxicity level. I don't know that you can sit in front of this red light too long. Your interest will wane before you get anywhere close to a toxic level. Is that a good interpretation? Is that how you understand it?
Well, we've seen something a little bit different than that. And I guess it depends on the individual. And so, for example, that infrared sauna that you referenced, those frequencies our approach is kind of what we call full spectrum, meaning that we mimic nature and we're capturing 98% of the frequencies the way that the sun delivers it to the planet. That's just
Okay.
me as a bioresearcher and scientist. I've taken that approach to basically our tech. Now, you take a very toxic individual or a very fragile individual with a chronic ailment. Let's just say, because we have a history with Lyme disease that you mentioned in the beginning, get a Lyme patient that's chronic and they've been sick for more than a year, but let's say for 5 years or more. We already know that the air, the water, and the food on the planet today, as we speak, all has toxic.
At some
Um,
level, yep.
yeah, at some point. You have a patient that expresses themselves as being very fragile or, with a lot of symptoms, and you throw them in that sauna. Now, those frequencies harmonize with the water inside your body, creating structured water, better cellular communication, but it creates what's called a bioresonance, which is a fancy word for vibration. And that vibration, the frequency vibration, actually breaks the covalent bond between the toxin and where it's stored in the body. So we have some toxins that are basically just floating in our bloodstream, but most of the ones that clog sort of the plumbing, they're attached to our tissues, our organs, our brain cells, stuff like that.
Lipids, yeah.
And that's where the challenge is. So I agree with you and your statement that you can't get overdose on light frequencies, but you can overdo it. Now, there's a subtle
That's
difference.
fair. That's
If
fair.
I'm very toxic and I jump in that sauna and I overdo it, I'm going to have a detox response, which could be what's called a Herxheimer response. And it's basically a flu-like feeling, but you could get lightheaded, dizzy, nauseous, histamine responses. All that goes along with your body's proper symptom or response to increasing your toxic burden by mobilizing those toxins being in that sauna. Now, you're doing it on purpose. You're going in the sauna to pull those poisons out so that you want to mobilize them. But if you dive too deep into the deep end and you're not comfortable there, then you have that response. So usually, and this goes back to your other point about dosing, what we like to try to teach people is to start to tune into the signs that their bodies are giving them when they have too much. And I know you can appreciate this, Don, because it starts probably in grade school and high school where you're working out and you're in gym class and your teacher or your instructor says, no, hit that hard, no pain, no gain, like
Oh,
all that stuff. But it doesn't work that way with light therapy and with this kind of technology. When your body says you've had enough, you need to listen. And rather than going that extra 10 minutes or 20 minutes on a 30-minute session, you stop, you drink water, you dilute down the toxic burden that you just stirred up, and you pay attention to the idea that your body's actually operating properly. You're coming back online. You're
so
sucking up those poisons and your body's telling you you're poisoned. Let's get these poisons out. And, that I think is very important for people to know.
So we had as you know, and I think our audience recognizes, I have an experience in the cannabis industry. And one of the sayings in cannabis is you start low and go slow. You start way down below what is probably going to be your eventual threshold. That sounds like that's good thought for when you start to use some of these new
Yeah.
therapies, whether they be red light,
Yeah.
sauna, whichever. Now, I wanted to, for our audience, I want to go into just a little bit more. So we're talking about infrared, near infrared therapies, which is down on the visible end of the light. It's light at daylight and and sunset. In the middle of the day, the light is primarily ultraviolet. Okay, and this is the sun. This is the light that burns your skin, that creates problems. That light can be very toxic if and can get toxic fast. So if you have not been in the sun and you go get in a tanning bed for an hour, you're going to walk away with a radical burn. It's going to be a very bad situation for you. So you start, if this is something you want to do, you start low, go slow, build up a resistance. So what you're saying, I think what we're saying is, where ultraviolet is the most intense light, we go out to the ends of the spectrum at daylight and sunset, sunrise and sunset. These are less intense, maybe more therapeutic, but you still have the start low, go slow rule of thumb as you begin to use these technologies.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, now what was really cool, so and I apologize that I don't have a TheraSage unit behind me, but I've given my TheraSage units, one to my father-in-law who's struggling with some health issues, and one to my daughter who had a rather significant injury back in October, and so she's over in Pittsburgh rehabbing. They have my two TheraSage units, and I just love them because what I like about your unit is they're flexible. And one of my Achilles heel is actually my knee. I had a knee surgery I've had 8 knee surgeries in my life, but the 7th was 5 years ago. I got a MRSA infection from it, and I've been struggling to rehab this for 5 years. I feel like I'm back, but one of my techniques was I took your TheraSage pad. I would put it in my compression gear. So I have compression gear that I do lymphatic massage with. I would put the red light panel inside. So I'm getting red light therapy on the knee while I'm doing lymphatic massage. You can't do that with many products on the market. That's what I loved about that so much. If you're thinking about this, and by the way, your TheraSage unit that we use, what would we call that? What's the name of that for our audience if they want to go look one of these up?
Well, we have Trilite, which is the system
Trilite.
that's behind me.
Yep.
And then the TheraPro, which is a multi-intervention device that.
Yeah, I don't think I can put the TheraPro in my compression gear,
No,
but
but
the Trilite,
no, and
I
I love
love the
what
Trilite.
I love, your point, because basically what's nice is that you can stack various different kinds of texts
Yes.
together to get a synergistic effect where it's going to expedite your healing a little bit faster than either one device by itself, and or clearly faster than your body will heal from, but left to its own.
And for the audience, that Trilite, it runs on a USB battery. Okay. The energy demand of this thing is incredibly manageable. When I travel, I roll it up, I put it in my luggage. I have a battery that I travel with that I charge my phones and other devices with, and I run it off of that. I don't have to be plugged into a wall or something like that. So the Trilite is a device that I recommend. It's a huge recommendation for me. But I want to move down because your TheraSage Pro looks like it's a blend between your Trilite and another technology that's called PEMF. And PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. Now, PEMF, if you've ever heard of this, there's a multi-level marketing company out there that's called Beamer. And this is where I see most of the PEMF stuff as I run into, particularly with athletes, by the way, Robby. They got connection there and they got a lot of growth, and I see that. But you have taken this PEMF therapy and brought it together with the near infrared red light therapy. I find that to be just absolutely intriguing. Tell me about the origin of that product and how did you get to that?
Well, before the Trilite, which is very unique in itself, we made a full spectrum infrared pad in different sizes, and it had natural jade stones on. We still make them, and it was one of our most popular devices and technology that we brought to the US. Next to, we're number one in our little portable sauna, not just in the US, but globally. And then later on, so that now we're going back 18, 20 years ago. Okay, so now moving forward, I noticed in clinic that people were expressing oxidative stress. They were having challenges with mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. There was depletion of nitric oxide, which is a transient gas, one of the 3 gases the body makes that is very important in vasodilation, which improves blood circulation. And that gas also triggers your blood to grab more oxygen. So one of the main reasons why we age over time is because our blood's ability to hold on to oxygen starts to diminish. And it has a direct correlation to the diminishing production of this gas called nitric oxide. All right. So seeing all that, I took my original formulation of frequencies in our Thera 360 and created the Trilite system behind us to augment the frequencies in the sauna when you're inside the tent, make it kind of more appropriate for the way people were expressing themselves, their sicknesses and their symptoms in the modern world. And so what I needed to do was dial more red light and near infrared frequencies into that sauna than what nature naturally delivers to the world. And it came from a couple of things, funny things. These are all anecdotal, Don.
Mhm.
I taught for 18 years at a wellness institute called Hippocrates here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I had a very unique room. I usually had 50 guests or so every time I speak, every other week there. And at the back of the room was this big mural of Hippocrates himself. And, him being the father of modern or Western
Mhm.
medicine, there were a lot of sayings that he had. And one was food is your medicine. And I thought to myself, it kept on bugging me like, yeah, food is your medicine, but the food of today isn't the same food nutritionally as it was 200 years ago.
Right.
Well, neither is our environment. It's
Right.
different. And so the cocktail of frequencies that the sun delivers to the planet and the way that it affects nature is certainly appropriate. But to really dial it in, we have to take a look at that formula, nature's formula, and add some frequencies in to address today's world, today's toxic world. And so that concept started percolating in my mind, and I came up with that we need to add red light, we need to add the near infrared frequency, some more of that into my cocktail in that sauna. That was the genesis of the idea behind the Trilight. And then I took a look at the LED industry, and all LEDs, aside from what you see behind me in the panel, what they call monochromatic. That means a single frequency per light bulb. And I looked at the physics behind that and the engineering part, and I said, well, why is this? I always ask that question, why,
Right. Right.
Is it about money or is it about the technology? And when I looked closer, I saw the guy who invented LEDs just wanted to make a lot of light bulbs. And so he created, a 600 light bulb, a 660 light bulb, an 850 light bulb, full range. And then I thought, well, what if I curated what I thought were the three most impactful frequencies on our biology to meet that formula? And I put that into
Love that.
one LED, which is what I created called a Trilight. Trilight meaning three lights. It's polychromatic. And so I can deliver, like you mentioned, very low voltage, like using a battery source or USB. I can deliver 3 times the amount of light energy through your skin directly into your cells, which is the end game. I mean, we're exposed to light, but mostly we've got layers of, like insulation of fat. We've got skin that's got layers, and all those act like filters so that we're exposed to light, but it doesn't necessarily penetrate that deeply, absent this kind of technology that you can put right on your body, right? And then earlier you were talking about the UV light, and UV light spectrum is very important, but you can overdo it, as you pointed out.
Quickly. Yeah.
But it's also on the other side, it's the principal light source that creates vitamin D3 in the body. And so absent that light exposure, we don't get enough of these days. And it's already been shown in clinics that 80% of Americans are vitamin D3 deficient.
Absolutely.
And D3 is called a vitamin, but actually acts like a hormone.
It's a
And
hormone.
so
That's
it's
exactly right.
principally responsible for a third of our body functions. More than 2,000 functions of the body systems don't work properly if you don't have the proper amount of vitamin D. So these spectrums are really important for our biology in general. And so what I did was I created a Trilight. First place was to put it in the sauna. Now I've got a cocktail of frequencies that when you're in sauna, you're getting full spectrum like the nature gives it to you, plus that's why it's called a 360 plus, because the plus is the Trilight that now dials in that formula of frequencies so it's more appropriate for today's world, the modern world. And I think that that's very relevant for people to understand.
Now, Robbie, one of the funny things, we go to these shows and there's a plethora of red light promoters out there. Provocateurs, promoters, could be either way. And I see all these people get down in this chair and they pull this red light thing over top of them and they're fully clothed. And I'm like, nah, it doesn't work that way. Light's got to get to the skin. Light is not going to, I mean, if I go lay in a suntan bed in my clothes, the only thing that'll get red is my face because it's unclothed. And so how, first of all, so you've got to use this thing against the skin. If you're using it systematic, you got to be naked, buck naked. And so with that said, how close do I need to be to the the diode for it to deliver its benefit?
Wow, that's a great question. You want it right on your skin.
Okay.
And that's what the Trilite is so unique, because you actually can put it on your skin without
Mm-hmm.
getting the exposure to electromagnetic fields, the EMF. Now, you
Okay.
take some of the other guys out there on products like behind you, that sort of tin can that's got diodes in
Mm-hmm.
it. It's generating red light, it's generating frequencies, but it's also generating electromagnetic fields. And the closer you get to it, you're getting the strong influence of the light, but you're also getting the strong influence of
Of
the
the
EMF.
EMF.
And so you have to strike the balance between what distance away and the benefit versus the detriment of the EMF side. So what we did,
Forgive me, Bobby. I bought this before I knew you.
no, it's all
We've
good.
had that discussion.
It's no, but it's perfect, because people out there tuning in need to understand the differences, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not against, the cans and the panels. I think that they're terrific. I'm just suggesting, even on
There's
the
a trade-off.
user guides that you get from them, they'll tell you stay 8 inches away, stay 12 inches away. And so again, it's perceptions and beliefs, Don. You're getting red light on you. It's shining. It's bright as heck, right? But you're also 12 to 18 inches away, where you're not getting the penetration. And so what that means is that you either have to be exposed to that light longer for you to get that same therapeutic effect, or stand closer, but then you take the risk of the EMF. And what
EMF.
we did was we learned, this was about 17 years ago, on just another one of Robby's things, a download from my messengers above. And we learned how to remediate from electromagnetic fields. And so all of our devices are absent those harmful frequencies, again, as we're finding out now, because, the cell phone industry generates now just an enormous amount of radiation and these bad electromagnetic fields, 5Gs, like those micro towers. You think they just have 5G and 4G on them, but there's 7 and 10G, because the military uses frequencies that they're not telling us about, that are
Mm-hmm.
mounted on those same microwave towers, And so we're bombarded with these silent energies that are harmful for our biology. Why not surround ourselves with energies that are actually helpful?
Yeah,
So
let's not contribute to it.
we remediate EMF so that we don't have that concern. We take it off the table. We're able to bring our panels and our devices directly on the body, which makes a difference. Most of the frequencies will penetrate through your clothing, but you're right. Well, there are two things, latex and silicone. So if you have stretchy kind of gym apparel or wear on, then it'll filter, meaning that, again, you have to either stay with it longer or keep it as close as you can to your body. You asked about the TheraPro, which is very unique, because what we did was, we have an athletic division. These ball players, they hit the road, they've got gear bags. Why not? My idea was, why not have a device that has embodies 3 or 4 different interventions? And so with a very simple, controller, you can have one of the kinds of therapies on you, like the PEMF, or you can have the red light, or you can have just the infrared, or you can have them all together and see
Mm-hmm.
what the concert and the synergies of dialing up all these therapies are in helping your body heal faster. And that's important, because, players have acute injuries all the time, and they have recovery challenges from competitions. So they really need to be dialed in to have devices that actually will synchronize their body's physiology with, their competition, so they're optimally performing.
And what's interesting about this is you would think that pro organizations or high level, high finance organizations would be invested in this. Literally, a good friend of mine sent me an article this morning, a New York Times article, about the Toronto Maple Leafs basically wiping out their sport performance group, their sports science group, and the relationship between injuries before they came on, injuries when they're on. Listen, here's the secret, is that The athlete is a disposable asset to most of these sports organizations, and they're treated like that. And if you're an athlete, or if you're someone who cares about an athlete, you've got to own the process yourself. You can't count on an organization to support you on this. So that's why we do a lot of the things that we do. You've got to own this. Okay, so I want to go into your technology a little bit more. PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. This is a magnetic field. We've been talking about light fields. Now we're talking about magnetic fields. Both of them are energy. They're just a little different. And when we look at PEMF, we look at a thing called Gauss. This is the measurement of the power of those magnetic fields. Now, when we go to our shows, we see the entire range. We see magnet embedded foot insoles that you put in your shoes, all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars of device that are basically magnetic hammers. I mean, they are powerful. Trust me, I love them at the right time, but there's a range there too. And I've got a feeling that, tell me about where you've chosen to come in on this Gauss level with your product.
Great. Good. It's amazing. What notes that you're hitting today, Don, are fantastic. Just like we talked about light therapy, magnetic fields work the same way. It's the relationship of your body to the device, and then the power of that device generating that field. So for instance, you can have the negative EMFs. We're talking about PEMF, which is a positive type of therapy. But let's say we take the negative EMFs, the ones that are harmful. Traditionally, like a desk fan would be one, because there's no agency that is actually monitoring the electromagnetic fields coming off the back of the motor. They're not shielded. So you're sitting in front of this fan, and yet you're getting cool from it, or the air is moving, but yet you're also embodied by these wavelengths that you can't smell, hear, taste. You can't see them, but it does affect your on a cellular level, it affects you. And we're learning more about the science there. We can touch on that if you choose to today. Now, if you take that same desk fan and I'm now sitting next to it, and I now move 10 feet away, it's still moving the air, but I'm not as close to the electromagnetic field, so it's not affecting me the same way on a cellular level. Okay?
Right.
So that's a strong distinction. Now, that's about the power. Now, if you take, our unit is just shy of 1,000 Gauss. So
Okay.
It's strong enough to be rated clinical, yet safe enough for me to feel comfortable selling it to the average individual, and they won't hurt themselves. You can have there's a company, I can mention some names. Can I mention some names of? Okay,
Listen,
so
your call, baby.
there's a company called Pulse Centers, and they make a unit that's $40,000 and it's 8,000 Gauss, more powerful than my unit. You lay on a pulse center table, and if you dial in the wrong amount of energy, let's say you dial it on a 10 out of 10, that is going to be so strong that your body's going to virtually be bouncing off the table like this, Don. So
Right.
we as a company make devices that are affordable, portable, and that are designed for personal care, healthcare. Like, I want this to be in your home. I don't want to be worrying that maybe your child, adolescent, or someone be using it and potentially can harm themselves. And so we had to find that line, and we found that 1,000 Gauss or less seems to fall into the range where we're getting a great clinical result. We can use it. Everybody can use it, and no worries about being harmful.
Because here's what's interesting about this. It was the turn of the last century, I think it was 1870s, that they first described, they looked at bone healing, and they knew that if you twisted a bone, it would respond by getting stronger. And then we know through strength and conditioning, these are small micro forces that go through our structure. People who lift weights for a living have thicker bones, denser bones than people who don't. And then in the kind of the late I don't know if someone, the microwave was invented because they had a microwave for communication. One of the scientists had a Hershey bar in his pocket, went out in front of this microwave transmitter, and the Hershey bar melted. And he's like, whoa, what's going on here? So the fact that we have these devices in our house now was a pure accident. And I'm sure I'm sure pulsed electronic magnetic fields were a similar situation. Someone was exposed to it, but these create small microforces that go through your system, and this is what causes our body to heal, to respond and heal. And it's a different tech, it's a different philosophy than the light therapy we were discussing earlier. It's working in different pathways. I love this combination of pathways that you have. This is one of the things. And full disclosure, I work with a couple coaches. I work with several athletes. One of them had a devastating injury. This gal's trying to get back in shape to play in the Los Angeles Olympics. So I gave her my list of things, and the TheraSage Pro. I'm like, you need this, and I believe this. I think this can be a healing device for most people, not just from a catastrophic injury. I see this as a device that, you know what, if you're sitting around at night and you're watching TV or you're reading a book, spread this thing out on your chair or spread this thing out on the couch, lay on this, get the healing effects of the red light therapy, get the healing effects of the PEMF, and use your environment in a positive way. Don't wait for it to come at you a negative way, but use it a positive way. So I love this combinations. Now, you've got one other technology in here that we haven't talked about yet, and that's the fact that it's a TENS unit as well. And when we say TENS, this stands for transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. So TENS units have typically been used in pain management, that we put little patches on your body and it interferes. Pain is a signal that goes from a receptor to the brain, okay? And we can interfere with that signal with an electronic pulse. It's also, this is one of the ways that acupuncture works, is we put that little needle goes in there, it interferes with the transmission of that signal, and that's the reason you get relief. It doesn't heal the injury, it just interferes with the pain transmission. Tell me about how you got TENS unit into this as well.
For that reason, it's another frequency. It's a microcurrent. And when you put the two, let's say, paddles or two patches, you're creating a connection. Your body's going to connect. The microcurrent goes from one pad to the other. They're communicating. And so it's sending a low current frequency across the distance. Now, if you put that over a muscle group, the muscles, the microcurrent is sending a signal that's similar to what your nervous system will send a muscle to do an action. And so when you injure your muscle, what happens, the muscle goes into trauma and it basically locks up. The muscle fiber is called an X and a Y band, and that muscle fiber locks up. And then over time, until the brain kind of figures out whether that injury is acute and it can fix it, or it becomes more chronic, and then the brain recalibrates and creates a new version of Don Moxley with now living with an injured muscle. So what the microcurrent does is it does what the body will do naturally by sending a signal to that muscle fiber, and it's sending us a electronic or a microcurrent, like a low current frequency, mimicking what the nervous system would send a signal to have that muscle have an action. And so that action starts to get rid of the edema, which is generally when you have an injury, you'll have some kind of swelling around the injury. That swelling is designed by the body anatomically to sort of lock up the muscle or lock up the joint.
And protect you.
Yeah, so similar to like a soft cast. But, in the modern Western world, we have a cast. But in nature, like if you're in a cave or living in a tent, or on the land, you don't really have that accessibility. Your body does this naturally, right? So the microcurrent jumpstarts your nervous system to send signals to that muscle to start working again, come out of trauma, come out of that tension. But, there's another point here. All of these kinds of technologies offer a stress. And stress has kind of a bad rap around it. We change, our bodies change.
We need to change the language, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And, weightlifting, bone density, the reason why your bone is more dense is because you're actually putting that micro or acute stress on it. And that stress is recruiting your body to create a stronger bone to now handle the new stress that you're giving it, which is you're doing it on purpose. But again, we're doing a TENS unit on purpose. So when we created the TheraPro, we wanted to arm the athlete Remember, I think everybody's an athlete, but we wanted to arm the individual with one device that offers them a multitude, 6 different interventions that they can pick and choose or combine to create a synergy to, again, address whatever, health journey they're on, or whatever injury they want to heal, or, whatever challenge they're looking to try to overcome.
Listen, Robby, you hit a home run with this, because this is something I've been involved with my whole life. And then the last half of my life, I've been helping other athletes and other performers try to improve what they do. And you're right. I don't care if you swing at a ball with a bat or a lacrosse stick, or you shoot a ball in through a basket, or you throw it down a field, or if you're the UPS or the Amazon driver that has to load 1,000 boxes and unload 1,000 boxes a day. This is athletic. This is super, I'm going to use a term here. It's probably not the right term, but it's superhuman utilization of your body. It's something that is outside the norm. You're up in the second and third standard deviation to the right of the population with the amount of work that you do. With that said, you've got to look at your recovery. You have to pay attention to that. And I had never thought about the TENS unit. I want to go look at the science on this, because I'm a huge advocate of a thing called specialized pro-resolving mediators, SPMs. This is a product that I put in products I've developed, but these are the chemicals that move the inflammation out of the cell, which you have to have done for you. You've got to have the omega-6s creating inflammation, but you need the omega-3s moving that junk out of the cell too, so you can get complete healing. And this is a huge tool in my toolbox. And I want to go look at this, whether it's red light, whether it is PEMF, whether it is transcutaneous electrical stimulation, all of which I have other devices for. You've put it in one unit. And
Yeah.
I think that's just brilliant. So thank you.
So you're welcome. I do want to point out that we did take a little more unique or different approach to PEMF, like infrared that has the near, mid, and far. So there's a span that's called full spectrum, which is what we do. That's different than just near devices or far infrared, like UV that has UV A, B, and C. So there's different ranges, frequencies that do different
That's
things.
what you get in your tanning beds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, PEMF has a full range of electromagnetic fields that they're pulsing. People are pulsing. When I looked at that and I looked at the range, I identified that there are some frequencies within the range of PEMF that are actually very detrimental. They'll alter your DNA and RNA, which is your genetic material and your ability to bring stem cells and regenerate your body. So
Is this what
I
happened to the Hulk?
something like that. So
Okay.
what I thought would be unique was if I could curate, like I did with Trilite, pick out 3 unique frequencies. What if I could curate 8 of the top frequencies within the PEMF range and just pulse those?
Love
And
that.
that's what we did with the pad. I have different hertz levels. The first 2 are designed to shift your autonomic nervous system into a very calm state called parasympathetic.
Parasympathetic, yep.
Okay, the next 2, P3 and 4, are designed to do the opposite, actually enhance your sympathetic response. So for an athlete getting ready for a competition, they're all revved up. For a student, or for like myself when I do research, it gets you really focused, because you're kind of
Can you do it simultaneously?
No, you're going to confuse your nervous system. You're either calm or you're tense.
You and I need to have
You
and I need to have a conversation about flow state and my belief that it is a integrated sympathetic parasympathetic response. They're happening simultaneously.
Let's talk about that, because there is a balance. That's that gray area that I was just referencing. Then the next 4 frequencies, P5 through 8, are designed to deal with acute to chronic pain. And then I have a P9 function that is basically a 5-second random interview of all the other 8 frequencies. So you kind of I use P9 when I'm working, because it creates a cocktail. Over 20 minutes, I'll get 5 seconds exposure of each of the P1 through 8. So in my body, those frequencies are being digested sort of as a cocktail. So you can pinpoint and direct our pad to give you just ones that affect your nervous system one way or the other way, or deal with pain and improving circulation and repair. And so that's what I
Outstanding.
find unique about our pad is like most of the other ones on the market now are just throwing the full basket of frequencies at you, hoping that some will stick. The ones that are very powerful in terms of high Gauss are more designed for clinic because a doctor or hospital only has the patient for 20 minutes or 15 minutes, 30 minutes on their table,
And
where
there's
our
some times
devices,
when you want to smack that thing. There's some times where you really want to load that thing up.
and I agree with that. But you know, what I found, and you may agree, in what I've seen in clinic and certainly in our lab, is that if you're looking for more sustainable, health, nature delivers these frequencies in what's called
Yes.
streaming, in a streaming manner. And so it's kind of like the slow and steady,
Yep.
allows the body to digest them, adjust, and get stronger. Now, sometimes when you have a chronic challenge or you have an injury, you need to jumpstart, just like you're jumpstarting your car on a cold
Right.
winter day. And then if the engine's warm and it's running and you're on all 12 cylinders. So I think that there's times when you do need to hit it with power. And also there's a new technology. It's not all that new, but the concept of pulsing versus streaming. And so when you pulse, it's like boom, boom, boom. When you're streaming, it's just And so we're combining pulsing and streaming in most of our newer technology so that if you want to jumpstart, you pulse, and then you can switch a gear into streaming, and then you're allowing your body to kind of transition, similar to like if you had a standard gearbox in your car, going from 6th gear down to 1 and all that.
Okay, I got to ask, you say 12 cylinders. You must be a Jaguar guy.
In my prior life, yes.
Good. Are you an F1?
Yeah, totally. How could you not be? It's so exciting, right?
Love F1. So, okay. Robby, this has been everything I wanted it to be. I am so grateful that you've given me the time to come on the podcast. For our listeners, TheraSage has generously given us a discount code that's good for 20% off. We'll have it in the show notes. It does not last forever, so if this is something you're thinking about, jump on there and use it. It's 90%. If you go to the TheraSage site, it's site-wide. You put in 90%, there's a 20, they've given us a 20% discount. And so this is, if you've been thinking about either a Tri-Light pad or a TheraSage Pro or getting into the 360 sauna concept, I don't do the 360 sauna, although you've got me intrigued. I want to try it now because listen, I'm an old wrestler. We used to put plastic bags on, go in the sauna and ride a bike in there. It was ridiculous. But I kind of I like having my head hot too. But love this. I love this concept of the combined therapies, your ability to use that. They're for what you're getting, they are very affordable. This can be a wonderful, and I'm sure someone can buy it. What is it called? HSA, their HSA accounts, things like that.
You can use your medical account. Yep.
You can use your medical account to buy these. You know what? It's something that I recommend, if not weekly. I recommend these things all the time. And I'm just grateful to get Robby on the podcast so we can talk about that and TheraSage. And buddy, keep up the good work. The world needs you doing what you do.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
So if you want to learn more, first of all, if you love the podcast, we ask you to like it, we ask you to follow us, and we ask you to share it with a friend. If you do that, that really helps us. Check out the notes. If you want to get more information about me, you can find me at trainrecoverwin.com or Don Moxley on LinkedIn. Robby, if they want to get a hold of you, go to TheraSage.com.
TheraSage.com. Instagram is TheraSage Infrared. TheraSage is our Facebook address.
TheraSage.com has a wonderful library of science. Their affiliates are off of the charts. The people that they have affiliated with their product, it is ridiculous the quality of professional they have associated with this company. And listen, the people that you hang out with, that gives clues as to who you're dealing with. And TheraSage has that. So I'm excited. I was excited to have you. I'm proud to call you a friend. And I can't wait until we have another reason to get on this podcast and talk about something else. So
Okay, there's
thanks
lots
for your
of
time
topics.
today.
Pleasure. Have
So
an
let's
awesome. Thank you.